you know, this is pretty meh. What I think would be more interesting, and this is a problem with 5e. This is a real big problem with 5e, is that I wish this would tell you if they're resistant, immune, or vulnerable to any damage types. 5e damage and 5e vulnerability is way too strong, but they could make it easily better. If you want to enhance your games and you don't mind, like, you know, doing a little bit of work to add some vulnerabilities to creatures, swap the mechanics for crit and vulnerability, and your game is going to feel so fucking good. Like, I've been running 5e that way for like 3 years now, and it feels great. It's so good. I say 3 years. No, 2 years now. Hey, what's up, Psychotech? Because the way that I want vulnerability and like resistances and immunities to feel is how it feels in the game. Like, okay, you want to know the best game that ever got this across is actually Pokemon. Pokemon is a complex paper, scissors, rock game, right? And the way that they work out, like, what's weak to this, what's strong against this, what's immune to this damage type, whatever, is such a brilliant, like, matrix, right? Oh, so enemies that are vulnerable, you roll again, and you roll an extra day. Yeah, exactly. You roll additional damage die. What do you mean by switching it for crits? I mean, okay, I want to do a video on this at some point. This is a home rule that Benjamin Huffman was talking about, and I started implementing it in my games, and I've talked about this in expos, and it immediately made damage and crits, vulnerability and crits, fucking great. What it does, you do this, and 5e feels great, and you're going to feel much more willing to give creatures vulnerability that way, and your combat is going to feel like, oh, vulnerability doesn't absolutely destroy a creature, and crits feel way more satisfying. For some reason, just the fact that you double the damage, not just the damage die, means that you're doubling their modifiers, the flat damage that it deals on top of that. Exactly, it lets you add more vulnerability options without ruining your monsters. This is so good. This is so fucking good. It is a travesty that they didn't do this for D&D 5e. Just reverse these two mechanics and it's beautiful. You can throw vulnerability on so many more creatures and not have to do this arbitrary, like, water and whatever thing. You could have even made damage absorption as its own, like, how does this make Great Weapon Master busted? I mean, sure, you're going to double the damage, but it's on a crit. Like, you know, and honestly, I cannot design around Great Weapon Master. That eats up so much territory. Like, I honestly think that, like, what would be healthier is if you do features like this and then get rid of Great Weapon Master. Yeah, Great Weapon Master is already a problem. Same with Sharpshooter, but you always hear people talk about Great Weapon Master because it's a must pick up on Barbarian because it's that good, right? Please make a video about this because that's dope. I will. Yeah, I will. This is something that immediately improved my games. I've talked about this at expos, and universally DMs I've told this to have been like, oh my god, wait, what? 5e is fucking great all of a sudden. All your problems with crit and vulnerability suddenly get thrown out the window, and if you're a DM that doesn't mind homebrewing your monsters, like, you know, I do, you're going to be way more, like, willing to throw this stuff out there. Aren't people already complaining that they feel like marshals aren't all that spectacular compared to spellcasters? Like, I mean, I'm just saying, like, you know, a lot of people, it feels like it addresses so many complaints. I'm in. It feels like this addresses so many issues that people have with D&D 5e. And this felt so damn good. It really does. Crits should feel special. Crits should feel special. You know, people talk about Great Weapon Master, but, like, honestly, this makes Champion Fighter look fucking scary. Scary. So you double the damage for crits, and then you give additional die for vulnerabilities. Yes. You just swap the two effects, and it immediately makes D&D 5e feel so fucking good. I promise you. That is the one home rule that I will say is like, it's the smallest change that you can make to your game that sure might make a little bit more work if you want to make it, yeah. But this is the one suggestion I make to the core game that is such an easy swap that will immediately improve your games. I swear to God, I swear. What about resistance? You don't screw with resistance, immunity, that's all fine. What about Barb and half-orc brutal critical hits? You just add the damage die, and then you double whatever that rolls. Totally fine. You just roll an additional die of damage and add it into the doubled effect. I think that's more of a versatility problem than a damage problem with spellcaster versus melee and range classes. And spellcasters can still crit, on their attack rolls. Yeah, crits can still do double. Add a little thing called weakness that does the extra die, so that way resistance and vulnerability can still mirror each other. I don't think the mirroring is really all that important. It's nice, if you can make that work out. But they don't have to be perfect mirrors. And I understand the idea that it doesn't feel super great for it not to be a carbon copy of its mirror. But honestly, this feels so good for play. I just don't really want to screw with it. Plus, doing resistance, really tweaking resistance in any way, that's going to screw with a lot of character options, and I just don't really want to mess with that. Yeah, exactly. Crits can still do double. It's nice for player expectations. Mean one thing. Making it easier to understand doesn't make it fun. Wait. I don't know what that may have been in. I don't know what they may have been arguing against. I don't want to make an assumption. I might mark. Oh, I think you mean Mark Holmes' system for crits. You deal the maximum damage for weapon dice, then roll the dice and add the modifier. So you're guaranteed good damage and can potentially get phenomenal damage. Sure, I don't mind that so much. But this is going to allow you to double flat modifiers, which is mathematically real nice. Real nice. Sure, you can do maximum damage with the weapon. Yeah, the one thing I will say though is that if you do this as a DM, I highly recommend that you be very generous with vulnerability now, because, or I say be generous with vulnerability. Instead, be looking at creatures and thinking of a reason to give undead vulnerability to radiant damage, right? Give the fire elemental vulnerability to cold damage. It's going to add an additional die of damage, which is going to make your spellcasters feel like, oh, cool, I'm smart now because I figured out the damage type that this thing is weak to. Yay! And then they get that feedback, right? Instead of damage types just being this odd thing of oh, I wish I was dealing force instead. Let me grab my food real quick. All right. I got tacos, bitches. Basically just changes when ability modifiers and other flat damage sources are doubled. Right, because in the current crit system, you can't double flat modifiers. In this crit system, you could. Which is... woo! And sure, you can double the modifiers with vulnerability, but honestly, vulnerability is exploitable. Here, it no longer is. I mean, okay, wait, let me take that back. It is, but it's not as potent. That's what I mean to say. Wait, I'm not sure what that may have been in... okay, so Ari said, my main issue with buffing crit damage is that it favors optimized builds that have advantage most or all of the time. I don't mind that so much. I mean, advantage is a system that incentivizes players to think tactically. So if they're thinking about that, that's fine. I'm cool with that. I don't know. It sounds like a problem that I think is actually something that this system enhances. Let me turn off my mic while I'm unwrapping this so you guys just don't get an earful of plastic wrap. So I hope that enhances your games a little bit. I'll talk about that more in a video. I might do that as like a VOD for, you know, clip for this, because it's my favorite tip to tell people at, you know, especially when I'm doing expos. And it's always it always seems like it becomes a talking point whenever I'm talking with other DMs. Aw. You gave my school of mimicry to a friend and she absolutely adores it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to hear. I think that's the longest I think I've ever had a class in like design hell. You feel free to screenshot this, and yeah. I swear to God, this is going to improve your games, guys. Like, just run it like this. It's going to be totally fine, and it's going to make D&D 5 feels... D&D 5e feels super, super cool.